At his promotion party, he raised a glass to freedom from my ex. I smiled from across the room because he had no idea what email I just sent to HR. Where in the world are you watching this from, and what time is it? Subscribe now, because this story won't just entertain you, it might haunt you. I never thought I'd end up here at this moment, watching him like a stranger, drinking to his own version of freedom. His face, the one I once knew so well, felt distant now, like a faded photograph, blurry and incomplete. The man I had loved was slipping away, piece by piece, until he was a shadow of what he once was. But in this room, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, I wasn't the woman who had fallen for his charm. No, I was something else now. I was a woman who had learned the hard way that love isn't just about passion and promises. It's about power, control, and, when it all crumbles, survival. I used to believe we were a team, that we had a future built on something real. He used to hold me close, whispering sweet things, making promises about forever. But forever never came. In its place there was silence, distance, lies. I remember the first time I noticed it, that feeling in my chest, that slow, cold knot of doubt that never went away. I'd catch him glancing at his phone in the middle of a conversation, his answers becoming shorter, his gaze more distant. I brushed it off, told myself it was nothing. I believed in him, in us. But the cracks started showing, the missed calls, the quiet evenings spent apart, the way he started pulling away. And then one day he didn't come home at all. Not for hours. And when he did, he acted like nothing had changed. My mother's voice echoed in my head, sharp and judgmental, the words I had heard all my life. You're too good for him. Don't waste your time with someone who doesn't appreciate you. I had always ignored her. She never understood. She never saw the version of him I saw, the one who laughed with me in the mornings, who held me when I cried, who promised me the world. But now, standing across the room from him, the man I thought I knew, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Maybe my mother had been right all along. Maybe I had been blind. I felt the weight of the room pressing in on me, the laughter and the clinking of glasses fading into a distant hum. My hands, cold and trembling, gripped my glass tighter. I wanted to be happy for him, to congratulate him, to pretend I was fine, but the truth was I couldn't. The lies, the silence, the betrayal, they all rushed back, crashing into me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. I had always thought I was the one who had been wronged, the one who had been hurt. But now, in this moment, I wasn't so sure. I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Was I the victim? Or had I just been too naive, too trusting, to see the truth that had been right in front of me all along? He raised his glass again, his voice louder this time, more triumphant. To freedom, he said, his eyes scanning the crowd, never once meeting mine. And in that moment, I realized that he didn't even know what I had done. He didn't know what I had sent to HR. How could he? How could he understand that, while he was celebrating his promotion, I was planning the destruction of everything he had built? I couldn't just stand there and let him win, not after everything. I had been patient, I had held my tongue, I had been the good girlfriend, but no more. This was my turn. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me. It was about taking back the power I had lost. It was about making sure that when the dust settled, I would be the one who walked away with my head held high. Not him. Not after everything he had put me through. I wasn't the same person I had been when I first met him. The girl who had fallen for his smile, the one who had believed in their future, she was gone. As I stood there watching him laugh and toast to his own freedom, I realized that I was no longer a passive part of his story. I wasn't just some footnote in his life. I was the one holding the pen now. And the next chapter? That was going to be mine. But just as the thought settled in my mind, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't need to look at the name to know who it was. It was him. His message blinked on the screen. A single sentence that made everything inside me freeze. We need to talk. I stared at the screen, the words blurring before my eyes. In that moment, everything seemed to stop. The music, the chatter, the laughter. It all faded into the background. My pulse quickened, and I felt a sudden surge of heat rise in my chest. I hadn't expected this. Not like this. Not now. The silence stretched between us like an invisible thread, the weight of his unspoken words hanging in the air. Something was shifting, and I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't over. No, this was just the beginning. I couldn't breathe. The message blinked at me, a cold, unyielding reminder that my life was spiraling into something I could no longer control. We need to talk. The words weren't just words, they were a threat, an ultimatum, a sign that everything I had tried to bury was coming back to the surface. My hands trembled, and for a moment I just stared at the screen, hoping the world would freeze. But it didn't. It kept turning, everyone around me still laughing, still clinking glasses, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I'd spent so long pretending things were fine, but this message, it shattered that illusion. I wasn't fine. Far from it. The truth was, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I thought I had been the one betrayed, that my trust had been broken, that I was the victim. But now sitting there I wasn't so sure. I had trusted him. I had loved him. But had I ever truly known him? Or had I been blinded by my own needs, my own desires, my own hopes for a future that was never going to happen? I felt like a fool, a puppet who had danced on his strings for far too long. And maybe, just maybe, I had been the one pulling the strings all along. Was it possible? Had I manipulated myself into this? I glanced up from my phone, my eyes scanning the room, trying to make sense of the chaos. I should have been happy for him. After all, his promotion meant success, stability, a future. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like a lie. His success wasn't just his. It was built on something I had never seen before. And that made me sick. How many people had he stepped on to get where he was? How many lies had he told? How many people had he left broken in his wake? And then just like that, another thought crept into my mind, one I wasn't ready to face. What if I had never truly known him? What if he had always been someone else? The perfect facade, the charming smile, the warm embrace, was that all just a mask? I couldn't remember the last time I had seen him without it. Was that why he was so good at hiding his true self? Because he was afraid of being exposed? Or was it because I had been too afraid to see the truth? The phone buzzed again, snapping me out of my spiral. I opened the message without thinking. It was short, almost too brief. I'll be home in an hour. We need to talk face to face. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a confession. Maybe an apology. Maybe an explanation. But what I didn't expect was the sudden flood of memories that hit me. Memories of things I had tried to forget. The way he used to hold me close at night, whispering in my ear that everything would be okay, that we were building something. I had believed him. I had trusted him. But now those words felt empty, hollow. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to face the truth. I wasn't ready for the chaos that was about to unfold. But I had no choice. I had spent too many years pretending, too many years hoping that the man I loved would come back to me, that we could fix everything. But maybe he wasn't the one who needed fixing. Maybe it was me. The noise of the party faded into the background as my mind raced. I didn't even notice when Sarah, my best friend, appeared beside me, her voice cutting through the haze. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, concern in her eyes. I forced a smile, but it felt like a lie. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing her or myself. She didn't buy it. "I've known you too long to buy that," she said softly, her gaze sharp. "What's going on?" I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I couldn't talk about this. Not with her. Not yet. Instead, I stared down at my phone, feeling the weight of the silence between us. Sarah's eyes lingered on me for a moment longer before she sighed. "I know you've been going through something, but you've got to be careful, okay? He's not the person you think he is. I've seen it. I've seen the way he treats you." Her words hit me like a slap. "What do you mean, Sarah?" I wanted to ask. I wanted to scream at her, demand she tell me everything. But instead I stayed silent. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure if I could trust anyone. Not even her. She gave me a sympathetic look, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I wanted to call after her, to ask her what she meant, to beg her to tell me the truth. But the truth was, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for everything to unravel. I pulled myself together and left the party, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to be alone. I needed to think. The walls of our apartment were closing in on me, the quiet so suffocating that I felt like I couldn't breathe. I sat in the dark, the silence echoing in my ears, as the minutes dragged on. I didn't know what I was waiting for. A sign. A moment of clarity? Something to tell me what to do next? And then it came. A knock at the door. Soft, almost hesitant, but unmistakable. I stood up, my legs unsteady, and walked toward the door. My heart raced as I opened it, but no one was there. Instead, there was a letter. A single piece of paper folded neatly. My hands shook as I picked it up, my eyes scanning the words written in an elegant hand. You were never meant to know. But now you do. And now it's too late. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I stood frozen, unable to move, my mind reeling. The letter slipped from my hands, falling to the floor with a soft rustle. The truth was out there, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. I wasn't sure I could handle it. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about me. About what I was willing to lose, what I was willing to fight for. Everything I thought I knew was starting to crumble, and I was left standing in the ruins, unsure of who I was or who I could trust. This was just the beginning. I felt it then, a shift, something deep inside me, a subtle, quiet change that began to claw its way to the surface. At first, it was just a flicker, a small, almost imperceptible spark that I pushed aside. But the more I thought about the letter, about the look on his face at the party, about the lies Sarah had whispered into my ear, the stronger that flicker became, until it was a flame I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It wasn't just a broken heart. It was war, and I was preparing for battle. The world felt colder now, more distant, like I had slipped behind a veil of glass and everything outside was muted, hazy. But inside I was awake, painfully awake. And there was a hunger in me now. A hunger for truth. A hunger for revenge. The silence of my apartment pressed in on me. I had barely noticed the hours ticking away, but they had, and now as I sat in the dark, it felt like the calm before the storm. He had no idea what was coming, none at all. I had spent years trusting him, thinking he was the man I knew, the man I loved. But now, with that letter in my hands and the weight of Sarah's words ringing in my ears, I saw it all. I saw through the facade. I saw who he really was. And it made me sick. I'd never been a fighter. At least not until now. Before, I had let things happen. Let the world run over me like a river carving its path through rock. But now I was the river, and I was going to carve my own path. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I wasn't going to let anyone get away with this. I stood up and walked to the small desk by the window, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened the drawer. There, hidden beneath a pile of old receipts and bills, was the phone I'd been using to track everything. I hadn't trusted him for a while, hadn't trusted myself either, but now with the letter, with everything falling into place, it was clear. This wasn't just about a failed relationship anymore. This was about power, control, manipulation. This was about exposing the truth. And I was going to do it. I picked up the phone and scrolled through the messages, the call logs, the emails. I had started to notice patterns a few weeks ago, things I had brushed off as coincidence. But now it all made sense. The late night calls, the business trips, the text messages he thought I didn't see, the way he'd lied to my face, pretending everything was fine. I had known it wasn't. I had felt it deep in my gut, like a whisper at the back of my mind telling me that something was off. And now here it was, the proof. The truth I had been too afraid to acknowledge. The phone buzz breaking my focus. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. Him. The message was simple, just one word. Home. My heart beat faster, my breath catching in my throat. I wasn't ready for this, not yet. But it didn't matter. The fire inside me was too strong now. I stood, walking to the door, every step heavy but certain. The time for fear had passed. When I opened the door, he was standing there, his face masked in that same fake smile he always wore. It was like I wasn't even looking at him anymore. Just a stranger, a man I didn't recognize. He stepped inside without a word, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I got your message, he said, his voice trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tension in it, the crack that betrayed his unease. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Words didn't seem to matter anymore. I closed the door behind him, the click of the lock echoing in the quiet apartment. You're being paranoid, he said, but there was a desperation in his eyes now, a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. It was fear. I knew it. Paranoid. I repeated, my voice cold, too cold. Is that what you tell yourself every time you lie to me? His face stiffened, the smile faltering. What do you want from me? He asked, a hint of anger creeping into his tone now. I didn't answer right away. I was done talking. Words had never been enough. I reached into the drawer, pulling out the letter, the one that had changed everything. I want the truth, I said quietly, watching his face drain of color as I held it up. He looked at it, his eyes widening in shock, then narrowing with something darker. He stepped forward, his hand shooting out to grab the letter, but I pulled it away out of his reach. What is this? He asked, his voice shaking now. The truth, I whispered, my heart hammering in my chest. And you can't hide from it anymore. His hand dropped to his side, clenched into a fist. You're making a mistake. No, I said, my voice low, calm, almost too calm. You're the one who made the mistake. You just didn't know I'd figure it out. The silence that followed was deafening. My mind raced, everything falling into place like pieces of a puzzle I'd never been able to see before. And in that silence I realized he wasn't the only one who had been manipulating things. I had been too. I had let myself believe in the illusion for so long. I had ignored the warning signs. I had been complicit in my own deception. But no more. I saw it in his eyes now, the fear, the panic, the realization that I was no longer the same person he had been able to control. And that terrified him. He had never expected this. I know everything, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but the power behind it was undeniable. He took a step back, shaking his head as if to clear it. You're wrong, he said, but I could see the cracks forming in his facade. This is crazy. You're crazy. I shook my head, the fire inside me burning hotter now. No, you're the one who's crazy. You think you can just keep lying, keep playing games. But not anymore. This ends tonight. I could see it now, the truth like a wave crashing over everything, threatening to drown us both. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of anything. And that's when I stopped being afraid. And if you stayed this long, you already know this wasn't just a story. This was a warning. Subscribe. And remember me. The air in the room was suffocating, heavy with everything that had led to this moment, this confrontation. The final collision of truth and lies, of trust betrayed and power reclaimed. His face was pale now, his eyes wild with desperation as I stood there, holding the letter that had torn our world apart. I could feel the burn in my chest, the heat of all the rage and hurt finally surfacing, finally demanding to be acknowledged. But there was no satisfaction in it, not really. Not anymore. The flames inside me had burned hot enough to melt everything around me, and now there was nothing left but the ashes of the past. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the same manipulative games, the same lies. He had always thought he could control the narrative. He had always thought he could control me. But he hadn't counted on this. He hadn't counted on me seeing through it all, on me breaking free of the spell he had cast over me. The truth was a weight on my shoulders, heavy and suffocating, but it was also liberating. It had torn away the blinders I had worn for so long, and in that clarity, I could see everything for what it was. The manipulation, the deceit, the people I had trusted, the people I had loved, all of it had been a game to him, and I had been his pawn, but not anymore. You think you can just walk away from this, don't you? He spat, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. His fists were clenched at his sides, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. It was almost pathetic, watching him try to salvage something from the wreckage of our relationship. But I wasn't listening. I had stopped listening the moment I realized who he really was. A monster wearing the skin of the man I thought I loved. I'm not walking away from anything, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. But you are. The look on his face when I said that, the realization that I wasn't afraid anymore, that I had nothing left to lose, was almost worth the torment of everything that had led to this. He took a step back, almost stumbling, his eyes wide, as if he had just seen a ghost. No, he said, shaking his head. No, you don't understand. This was never about you. This was bigger than you, bigger than all of us. You think I did all of this for nothing? A cold laugh escaped my lips, bitter and sharp. I don't care why you did it, I said, my voice low, dangerous. You hurt me. You lied to me. And now you're going to pay. He took another step back, but I wasn't finished. I couldn't be. There had been too much pain, too much betrayal. I had been played, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. The phone in my hand buzzed again, the screen lighting up with an incoming message. It was from Sarah. I didn't have to open it to know what it said. I already knew. She had been feeding him information, feeding him lies, manipulating me just like he had. But I was done with both of them. I was done with the lies. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls pressing in as the truth settled around me like a storm. You never cared about me, I said, the words cutting through the tension like a knife. You never loved me. You were using me. But you know what? It's over. His eyes darkened, his jaw tightening as the reality of it all hit him. You think this is over? He sneered. You're nothing without me. You'll never be anything. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but they didn't land the way he thought they would. Instead of breaking, something inside me snapped, a final irreparable break. For a moment I saw it all the years of silence, of betrayal, of pretending everything was fine. And I realized something then. I wasn't broken. I had never been broken. He had just made me believe I was. You're wrong, I said, my voice quieter now, but no less powerful. I don't need you. I never did. You were just a cage I put myself in. And that's when it happened. The silence in the room deepened, stretching longer than it ever should have. I could hear my own breath, shallow and rapid, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected, for him to beg, for him to apologize, but he didn't. He just stood there watching me, his face a mask of fury and something else, something darker. I didn't know if he was about to lunge at me or leave, but I didn't care. He didn't have that power over me anymore. But then as I reached for the door, something caught my eye, the hidden phone, the one I had been using to track everything, the one I had kept tucked away for just this moment. I glanced down at it, and that's when the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I looked at him, and he must have seen the change in my eyes, the understanding dawning, because his face drained of color. You knew, I whispered, my voice barely audible, but it was enough. You knew this whole time. You planned it. You used me to destroy everything. He froze, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words, but there was nothing left to say. His plan, his betrayal, it was all laid bare. And in that moment, as the truth washed over me, I realized something else. It didn't matter anymore. All the anger, all the pain, it didn't matter. Because the truth was now mine, and no one could take that from me. Not him, not Sarah, not anyone. I'm done with you, I said, turning away, the finality of the words settling into my bones. I'm done. And I left. The world outside felt different, sharper. The wind bit at my skin, but it felt good, refreshing. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The last thing I saw before I stepped into the street was the reflection of myself in the glass door. And for the first time in years, I recognized the person staring back at me. She wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. She was a survivor. And I wasn't afraid anymore.